sign the house over to me or I'm calling off the engagement. He said it like he was asking me to pass the salt. That night I had a locksmith change every deadbolt in my house. I boxed up his things and left them on the front porch before midnight. And the ring, the one he picked out himself and asked me to hold on to until he could afford to resize it. I mailed it back to his mother with a short note that said simply, "Please return this to wherever it came from." He found out everything the next morning when he showed up unannounced and his key didn't work. I watched from the upstairs window. I didn't feel guilty. I felt, for the first time in 14 months, like I could breathe. Let me back up. My name is Maya, and I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner based in Columbus, Ohio. I've been in this field for 11 years. I work long shifts, I carry a caseload that would make most people cry into their coffee, and I have always been careful with my money. Not because I had a lot of it growing up. The opposite, actually. My mom raised my sister and me in a 2-bedroom apartment in Dayton after my dad left when I was 9. She worked double shifts at a grocery store so we could have health insurance. I watched her count quarters on the kitchen table to cover a copay. I decided very young that I would never be in that position. I would never be financially dependent on anyone. By the time I was 31, I had paid off my student loans, built up a 6-month emergency fund, maxed out my Roth IRA for 4 consecutive years, and put a 20% down payment on a 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood on the east side of Columbus. I did it myself. No cosigner, no family money, no help. Just 12-hour shifts and a spreadsheet I updated every Sunday night. The house was mine, every single square foot of it. I met my fiancé, I'll call him Derek, at a friend's birthday dinner in the spring. He was charming in that easy, low-effort way that some men are. Funny without trying too hard. He asked good questions and actually listened to the answers, or at least he seemed to. He worked in sales, he told me. Corporate account management. Good company, solid base salary plus commission. He had his own apartment, paid his own bills, seemed to have his life together. We dated for 6 months before he told me he loved me. 8 months before I introduced him to my mom. 14 months before he moved in. That last part, the moving in, was the first decision I made that I would later regret, not because I didn't love him. I did, but I moved fast, and I told myself it made financial sense. He'd been spending 4 or 5 nights a week at my place anyway. His lease was up. It seemed logical. He gave up his apartment in March. By April, I noticed the first thing. He stopped mentioning work. Not in a dramatic way. Not like he announced anything. He just stopped bringing it up. When I'd ask how his week was going, he'd say, "Fine," and redirect the conversation. I assumed he was stressed. Sales can be brutal. I gave him space. In May, his car needed a repair. A big one. The transmission had gone. He asked if he could borrow $1,200 to cover it just until his next commission check cleared. I said yes without hesitating. He was my partner. That's what partners do. The check never came up again. He never paid me back. I told myself I'd bring it up later, and later never arrived. By June, I was covering all the groceries. By July, all the utilities. He'd Venmo me something occasionally, $60 here, $100 there, and I'd feel a small wash of relief, like maybe I'd imagined the pattern forming. But I hadn't imagined it. The pattern was forming, slow and deliberate, like water finding cracks in concrete. One evening in late July, I came home after a 12-hour shift to find him and his brother watching TV in my living room. His brother, who I'd met twice, was eating takeout on my couch, feet on my coffee table. Derek introduced us again like it was perfectly normal. I smiled and went upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed for a few minutes, very still, trying to figure out why I felt like a guest in my own house. I brought it up later that night. I said I'd appreciate a heads up when he had people over. He said it like he was asking me to Maya. I shouldn't have to ask permission. I let it go. That was mistake number 2. The proposal came in September. We were in Asheville for a long weekend. a trip I'd planned and mostly paid for, though I didn't keep score, or told myself I didn't. He proposed at dinner on the second night, over a bottle of wine he'd definitely put on my credit card. The ring was beautiful. I cried. I said yes. On the drive home, he held my hand across the center console and talked about our future. He wanted to get married in the spring. He wanted kids, 2, maybe 3. He wanted a bigger house, something with a yard, a 2-car garage. I listened and nodded and felt warm and full of hope in the way you do when you just decided to build a life with someone. I didn't notice until much later that every single thing he described in that future was something I would be building. He just planned to be in it. The engagement lasted 4 months before everything unraveled, and the unraveling happened in a single conversation on a Tuesday night in January. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the one I'd carried up 3 flights of stairs with my friend Janelle when I first moved in. And Derek said he had something important to talk about. He said he'd been thinking about our future, about stability, about building something real together. He said it like he was passing me to it. He needed to feel secure. He said that the way things were set up right now didn't feel like a partnership. I waited. He said it like he was asking me to pass the salt. I kept my face neutral. I asked him what he meant, exactly. He said a married couple shouldn't have one person owning the home and the other just living there. It created an imbalance. He said if something happened to me, he'd have nothing. He said he deserved to feel like this was his home too. I said I understood that feeling and that I was open to talking about it. I asked him what else he was thinking. He said the car should go in both names too. My car, the one I'd bought outright 2 years ago, a certified pre-owned Subaru I paid cash for because I refused to carry a car payment. Both names. I nodded slowly. Then he said the savings account. Not a joint account going forward where we'd both contribute. My existing savings account. The one with 4 years of max Roth contributions and an emergency fund I'd built dollar by dollar. He said it like he was asking me to pass the salt. He said it like he was asking me to pass the salt. I remember looking at the grain of the kitchen table while he talked. I remember thinking about my mother counting quarters. I remember thinking about the version of myself at 22 who worked weekends at a coffee shop to make her loan payments early. I remember thinking, he has contributed nothing. He has paid back nothing. He has 0 equity in anything he is asking to be put on. I looked up and I said very calmly, I need some time to think about this. He said it like he was asking about we're getting married. I said I just needed a few days. His jaw tightened. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, and I will never forget the flatness in his voice when he said it. Maya, I need to know you're serious about this partnership. If you won't put the house in my name, I'm not sure this wedding should happen. He stood up and went to bed. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The next morning, I texted my friend Janelle and asked if she could talk. We met for coffee during my lunch break, and I told her everything, not just Tuesday's conversation, but the car repair I'd covered, the utilities, the groceries, the feeling of being a guest in my own home. When I finished, Janelle set down her cup and said, very quietly, Maya, do you hear yourself? I did. For the first time in 14 months, I heard myself clearly. I also called my financial advisor that afternoon, a woman named Brenda I'd been working with for 3 years. I didn't need her to tell me what to do. I think I just needed to say it out loud to someone who dealt in numbers and facts and reality. She listened and then she walked me through exactly what would happen if I added Derek's name to my house. In Ohio, once someone is on the deed, they have legal claim to the property. If we divorced, he could be entitled to a portion of the equity I had built entirely on my own, before he was ever in the picture. She said it plainly and without drama, the way good financial advisors do. I thanked her and hung up and sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for about 10 minutes. Then I drove home. Derek wasn't there when I arrived. He was out. He was often out in the afternoons, though I'd long stopped asking where. I walked through the house slowly, through the kitchen with the table I'd carried myself, through the living room with the rug I'd saved for 3 months to buy, down the hall past the second bedroom I used as an office, into the master bedroom with the furniture I'd chosen piece by piece. This was my home, every inch of it. I had earned it. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry exactly. I was just very, very clear. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a locksmith. The second was to my mom. When Derek came home that evening, I was sitting in the living room. I told him I'd thought about what he said. I told him I wasn't going to put the house, the car, or my savings in his name. I told him I wasn't going to do it before the wedding, and I wasn't going to do it after the wedding, and if that meant there was no wedding, then I was prepared to accept that. He stared at me. He said it like he was being selfish. He said it like he was treating him like a stranger. He said if I really loved him, I wouldn't need a lawyer to tell me what to do. And something in me went completely still at that, because I had never mentioned speaking to anyone. He said it like he was asking me to meet. I said, I'm choosing myself. He called his brother to come pick him up. While he was upstairs packing a bag, the locksmith arrived. I let him in. Derek came downstairs with a duffel bag and found a man in my entryway changing the deadbolt, and the look on his face, the pure shock of it. I won't pretend I didn't feel a small, clean satisfaction. He said, What is this? I said, I think you should take what you need tonight and arrange to get the rest this week. I'll have everything in boxes. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. He left. His brother waited outside with the engine running, and I watched the car pull away from my front porch and felt something in my chest loosen. Something I hadn't even realized was clenched tight. I went upstairs. I slept better than I had in months. The next few weeks were what I'd describe as the emotional tax of making a good decision. It still hurt. I'd been in love with someone, or in love with who I thought he was. And untangling that is painful no matter how right the decision is. I cried in my car more than I'd like to admit. I had one bad Sunday where I went through old photos and almost texted him. Almost. I didn't. What helped more than anything was the conversation I had with a woman at work named Gloria. She's a charge nurse, 62 years old, 30 years in the field, and she has the kind of quiet authority that makes you want to sit down and listen whenever she starts talking. One afternoon during a slow shift, I told her what had happened, the vague version, without all the details. I said I'd ended a relationship and it was harder than I expected. She nodded like she already knew. She said, the hardest ones to leave are the ones who made you feel guilty for having something. I thought about that for a long time. There's one more part to this story that I haven't told yet, and it's the part that still makes me laugh a little when I think about it. Before I ended things with Derek, we'd been in the early stages of planning the wedding. Nothing was booked, nothing was paid. I'd been intentionally slow about that, some part of me already sensing something was wrong. Except for one thing. Derek had gone with his brother to get measured for a suit at a menswear boutique downtown. He hadn't bought it yet. It was just a consultation and measurement appointment. He'd been talking about it for weeks. A navy blue suit, peak lapels, the whole thing. About 2 weeks after he moved out, I happened to be walking downtown on my lunch break and I passed that boutique. On a whim, I went in. I explained that my engagement had ended and I wanted to do something useful with the situation. The tailor, a kind older man named Frank, pulled up the file. Derek's measurements were there, his suit preferences, everything. Frank mentioned they sometimes partnered with a local non-profit that provided professional clothing to veterans and job seekers getting back on their feet. He said a man had come in that week, a recently returned veteran, he said, whose measurements were strikingly close to what was on file. I asked Frank if they could use the style details, the navy, the peak lapels, all of it, and build something new for that man, and I'd cover the cost as a donation. Frank looked at me for a moment and then smiled like he understood the whole story without my having to tell it. 3 weeks later, he sent me a photo. The veteran, in a sharp navy suit, standing outside the shop. He was smiling. The suit fit him perfectly. I printed the photo and put it on my refrigerator, and it's still there. People have asked me if I regret losing 14 months to someone who wasn't right for me, and I understand the question. I do. 14 months is real time. But here's what I also know. I didn't lose the house. I didn't lose the car. I didn't lose the savings account that my mother's example taught me to build. I didn't co-sign anything or deed anything over or make a single financial decision I can't undo. Derek wanted me to prove my love by giving up my security, and for a while I almost believed that was a reasonable thing to want. My friend Janelle, the one who sat across from me at that coffee table and said, "Do you hear yourself?" She asked me recently what I'd tell someone who was in the same position I was in a year ago. I thought about it for a second, and I said the moment someone frames your financial independence as a threat to the relationship, pay attention. Love doesn't ask you to empty your accounts to prove it's real. I still live in my house. I repainted the living room a color I'd always wanted, a deep, warm terracotta, and I got a new couch. My mum came to visit in the spring and sat on that couch and looked around and said, "This place feels like you now." She was right. It does. I walk through the front door every evening, and I know with complete certainty that every single thing inside belongs to me, not because I'm selfish, because I worked for it, protected it, and refused to let someone else's ultimatum become my emergency. That knowledge is quiet and solid and mine, and no one is ever putting their name on it. There's a photo on my refrigerator of a man I've never met, wearing a navy suit with peak lapels, standing outside a menswear shop on a Tuesday afternoon. He's smiling. The suit fits him like it was made for him, because it was, just not for him originally. Every time I open that refrigerator door, I think about how things end up exactly where they're supposed to be. Not because the universe arranges it, but because the choices we make, one after another, eventually land somewhere real. Derek didn't lose me because he was unlucky. He lost me because of what he chose to do repeatedly over 14 months. The car repair he never paid back. The utilities he stopped mentioning. The ultimatum delivered at my own kitchen table about my own home that I had built without him. Cause and effect isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a series of small decisions that compound quietly until the weight of them becomes undeniable. He made his. I made mine. What I've been thinking about lately is how close I came to making the wrong one. And I don't say that to be hard on myself. I say it because I think it's important to be honest about it. I almost signed the house over, not because I was foolish, but because I confused love with obligation and kindness with unlimited access. Those are two very different things, and learning to tell them apart is some of the hardest, most necessary work a person can do. My mom used to say that integrity isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when you're alone at a kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night, trying to talk yourself into something that doesn't feel right. I sat at that table. I felt the pull, and I chose not to move in the direction of fear. That choice, that quiet, unsexy, undramatic choice, was the one that changed everything. Janelle asked me once what I'd learned from all of it. I said I learned that wisdom isn't automatic. You can work hard, build something real, and still not see clearly when someone is slowly rearranging your sense of what's normal. Intelligence and self-awareness are muscles. They have to be used deliberately, especially when emotions are involved, especially then. And Brenda, my financial advisor who taught me through what joint ownership would actually mean in Ohio, without drama, just facts. She reminded me that clarity is a form of courage. Knowing something is one thing. Acting on it, when acting on it is painful, is another thing entirely. That's where character lives, not in the easy moments, in the ones that cost you something. I'm not the same person I was 14 months ago. I'm more careful, yes. But more than that, I'm more honest with myself about what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not. That line is mine to draw. No one else gets to move it. The house still has the terracotta walls I painted last spring. My mom sat on the new couch and said it finally felt like me. She was right. It took losing something I thought I wanted to find out what I actually had. That's enough of a lesson for one lifetime, maybe two.